got to be biblical.
It's totally going to be biblical. And there's another part to this, which is today's Nephilim update.
Nephilim update. Nephilim update. Nephilim update.
Yeah, we usually do Nephilim updates at the end of the show, but I couldn't resist. And you know what? Basil's not here to stop me. So here I am early in the show talking about the Nephilim, which could be a turnoff or could be an eye-opening experience, or you all know about it already. The story comes from Cosmos Magazine, and the headline here: scans of tiny 13.5 million year old Aussie crocodile suggests it may have spent most of its time on land. Ooh, land walking tiny crocodiles from Australia. Here's what it says. A tiny crocodile, which called northwestern Queensland home 13.5 million years ago, has revealed its secrets to University of Queensland researchers. The paleontologists used high-tech methods. Oh, high-tech methods, folks. What are high-tech methods? Okay, anyway. To scan the fossils of the creature to uncover previously unknown details about its anatomy. The findings are published in the Journal of Anatomy. Named in 1993, the ancient croc is called Trilophosuchus rackhami, meaning Rackham's three-crested crocodile. It was named after Alan Rackman, the current manager of the Riverslay Fossil Discovery Center at Mount Isa in northwest Queensland. Mount Isa. Isa being, isn't that how the Islam, the Muslims, what they call Jesus? Interesting. Quote, by micro-CT scanning the beautifully preserved skull, we were able to digitally separate each bone, says author Georgo Ritevsky, a PhD candidate at UQ. Quote, we estimate that at adulthood, Trilophosuchus rackhami would have been between 70 and 90 centimeters long and weigh 1 to 2 kilograms, which was very small compared to most present-day crocs. This was a truly unique-looking croc with a short snout and 3 distinct ridges on top of its skull. Trilophosuchus lived in the middle of the geological period known as the Miocene, which lasted from around 23 million to 5 million years ago. And it goes on here. Australia's climate in the Miocene was much more humid and wetter than it is today, though it would get drier by the late Miocene as more of Earth's atmospheric moisture was being trapped in the ice sheets of Antarctica. Antarctica, there it is, which were beginning to form. We'll get to Antarctica at the end of the episode. But I think it's funny that they have this little diagram here, the Trilophosuchus rackhami size compared, and they have a man, maybe it's Basil, an outline of a man, and then they have this little tiny little croc on the bottom, and they have to have one of those like magnifying arrows that points to the head of the croc, and then like a bubble that zooms in on what's going on with the little skull of this little croc, this ancient croc. And, this is just a fun theory. Please don't take this as like any kind of doctrine or anything like that. But I'm just throwing this out there. If this is some kind of ancient skull of some kind of lizard creature, what if the ancient lizard people, the elite lizard people, the deceiver, the Hanakash, Satan, the serpent in the garden, the jealous, that was jealous of humanity. What if part of that jealousy was because he was tiny? He was just a itty bitty creature. These little tiny lizard folk. And God made humans, and humans were much bigger than the lizards. And they got really, these little lizards got mad. And I'm just throwing it out there, especially because here's the rabbit trail, right? You talk about quantum theory and just the how small things get. But also, in history, in mythology, we have the idea of sprites, these spirits that fly around, these little tiny balls of light. We have gnomes and fairies. We have stories like Gulliver's Travel, In more modern times, we have things like Ant-Man. They show you just the small thing. And if you go to Canary Cry Radio, that's our interview style show that we'll maybe pick up again on in a few months here or a few weeks. There's an episode with Dr. Hugo de Garis, who basically outlined how in this century, we're going to have some kind of major war between three factions: the Terrans, who believe that we should not enhance ourselves with technology and machines in terms of like biologically, changing ourselves; the Cyborgists, who want to merge with machine to enhance; and then the Cosmists, who believe that we will become our own gods with the merging of technology. The war between those three factions. And at the end of that episode, you can go look for it, on Canary Cry Radio. Just type in Dr. Hugo de Garis, Canary Cry Radio. You'll find it on the internet. At the end of that episode, Dr. Hugo de Garis proposed a very interesting idea, which is that perhaps if there is, because I don't think he's a believer, but although he hangs out with a lot of believers like us, because we like his theories and we entertain some of his writings and stuff. And I think that's its own form of witness for him, to him actually. And he brings up this idea that if there is an advanced civilization, they wouldn't be going out into space and out there. They would be shrinking. They would be going inward, which goes into this idea of, dimensions and things like that. But he talked about the pico scale, which is, much smaller than a nano. Most people are freaking out about nanobots and nanotechnology and all that stuff, right? But in reality, the scale goes much, much lower. You got your pico, you have your femto, you have your atto, your zepto, and yocto. These are all, so for example, yocto is a trillionth of a meter. Is that what it is? Something like that. Hold on. Let me look at my notes. Yeah. So a nanometer is a billionth of a meter, but yeah, you get down to yoctometer. It's the trillionth of a meter. So very, very, very tiny. And the idea he proposed was that no, they wouldn't, these advanced civilizations wouldn't be moving out there. They would be going inward. They would be shrinking, which is a very fascinating idea. Given the context of these little tiny lizard things that they found, lizard skulls. And the other thing to keep in mind too, I know this is in the context of a snake, so it's kind of, people have interpreted it as, snakes are on the ground, but you just read Genesis 3 and it talks about, Eve and Adam eating of the fruit of knowledge and evil, which God told them not to do. And that's the beginning of the fall of human beings. And if you go to the punishment, the fate of the serpent, it says here at verse 14, again, this is Genesis 13, because you have done this is God talking to the serpent, explaining the curse upon the serpent. Because you have done this, which is deceive humans, cursed are you above all livestock and every beast of the field. On your belly you will go, and dust you will eat all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He will crush your head, you will strike his heel. And again, most people think about a literal snake being on the ground. It's on its belly, things like that. But I'm just picturing like a little reptilian humanoid, like going up to Jesus being like, hey man, why did you have to create humans, man? We're the creation, or kings of creation or something, whatever. And then like being all mad and like trying to bite Jesus's heel, I know it's kind of silly, but it's just one of those things that makes you think about what's going on here. And it's just a fun, entertaining thing. And so, there you go. That was my little takeaway. And so, I don't know. There's not much else to say other than, Luke 16:10 talks about one who is faithful in the very little is also faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. And so if you think about the smallest things in this world, it all matters. Every molecule, maybe every proton, everything, it's upheld by God. And, you can say, well, what about these little tiny lizard people? How's that good? Well, Romans 8:28 says, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. So we know that even those little tiny lizard people, their rebellion against God is actually working towards the good of all who love him. So there you go. Just a little fun theory slash, I don't know, highlighting of a certain narrative and certain aspects of the Bible that most people miss. And, you know, we're having fun with this, but there is a level of scholarly research done in this regard. And it's just dismissed too much. You know, I think too many people in Sunday school just kind of consider it just a snake or it's mythology or whatever, kind of your normie Christians out there that don't dig too much deeper. But when it comes to, you know, the end times, the three frogs that look like spirits that come out in the book of Revelation, things like that. And you look at ancient history, the role of the serpent, it just makes you wonder, you know, when Aussie, what are they called? What was the name here? The Journal of Anatomy. Yeah, the school at the River Sleigh Fossil Discovery Center at Mount Isa in northwestern Queensland. When they come out with this little tiny lizard skull and they're like, yeah, this is a 13.5 million year old Aussie crocodile walking around. Maybe it's actually the skull of a little reptilian that existed, which maybe that's what the Bible was describing. The Hanakash, the Shining One, as you interpret it properly. So there you go. Just a little thing to get people to crack open their Bibles because, you know, people might think I'm crazy, but, you know, the fact is,
people don't even read their Bible, for heaven's sakes.
So if I can get you to crack open your Bibles, then my job is done here.